In this video, I'm going to show you how to bring up the bobbin thread when you are quilting with the walking foot. Whenever you start to quilt, it's a really good idea to bring that bobbin thread up to the top of your quilt sandwich. If you leave it on the underside, the bobbin thread can get tangled up in other stitching, it can create a thread nest, and whatever it does can be hard to fix, or it leaves you with something kind of ugly on the back of your quilt. So you want to make sure before you start that you have a couple of inches of bobbin thread pulled out of the bobbin case. If you've been using your automatic thread cutter, it only leaves ½ inch and you're not going to have enough bobbin thread that you can pull it up. So the first thing you want to do is pull that out and make sure there's plenty there. Then I'm going to show you two methods of doing this. One is using your needle up, needle down button if you have one on your sewing machine. The second method is how to use the hand wheel in case you have a machine that doesn't have the needle up, needle down button. Finally, I'm going to show you how to bring up the bobbin thread when you finish doing your quilting. So let's get started. I'm holding the needle thread with my right hand. I'm going to use needle down, needle up, and then I very gently pull on that needle thread, and you can see that the bobbin thread comes up, forms a bit of a loop, and I can just take my awl and pop it through that loop, and there I have my bobbin thread up to the top of my quilt sandwich, and I can start quilting. Alternatively, let's try this another way, I can use the hand wheel. And when you use the hand wheel, you'll be holding the thread with your left hand. The hand wheel is the wheel on the right-hand side of your machine, and you always turn it towards you. And you can see as I'm turning, the needle goes down and then turns around and comes back up, and you do it till it gets to the top of its game. And now when I pull on the needle thread, there you can see the bobbin thread comes up to the top. I can grab that loop with my awl or with a seam ripper or a stiletto, and I am ready to quilt, ready to start sewing because I have my threads on top. Now, when you start and stop when you're quilting, you have to pay attention to the ends, how the ends are going to be fixed so that the threads don't pull loose, and so that you have something that's attractive. The traditional classic way of starting and stopping when you quilt is to bury the thread ends. I have a separate video for that because you do that the same way whether you are doing walking foot quilting or free motion or ruler work. But there are some other alternatives, and another one is to use a form of microstitching. And when you microstitch, you take 4 or 5 very short stitches at the very beginning. Because they're so short, they anchor the thread so it doesn't pull loose, and then you continue with your regular stitch length, and when you get to the end, once again, you microstitch. Now, there's 3 different ways of getting yourself some microstitching. The first one is that many machines now come with a button, and it will look like a circle with a dot in the middle, and that does your microstitching or stitching in place. And so I'm going to do that first, and I push the button, and when I start to sew, you can see that the needle just goes up and down in the same place several times, then it stops, and then I can go ahead and just start with my stitching. And that's good. I don't like that as well because sometimes I find that stitching in place creates kind of a knot that's noticeable, particularly if you're using a heavier thread. And I'm never feel quite as sure that sewing up and down in exactly the same hole really anchors it as well as the other 2 methods. The second method is where you change your stitch length. And in this case, I'm going to change my stitch length from 3.0 to 1.0. And on my machine, you can hear me pushing the button as I shorten the stitch length. And then I take, say, 4 or 5, you can see very short stitches, stop, and then I change the stitch length back to whatever I like to use, 2.6, 2.8. My preferred stitch length these days is 3.0, and then you can just get started and go. Now that's a really nice method. That's, for instance, the one that Jackie Gearing uses in her walking foot book. She has a Bernina where the stitch length is set by a dial, so that's really easy. That's just a flick of your wrist. On my Janome, the stitch length is changed with a button, and so you have to push the button 20 times to get the right size, and I find that kind of boring. And then I forget to change it back, and I'm not happy. So this third method is the traction method, and this is the one that my walking foot students generally seem to prefer. And in this one, you'll see I've got my hands firmly placed on either side of the walking foot. And what I do is I just use traction to keep the feed dogs from moving the quilt sandwich through at its full stitch length. So it takes little short stitches. And this will not blow up your machine. It will not break anything. And so here I have got it at my regular stitch length. And you can see I'm just holding it and just letting it do little tiny stitches, and then I let it go and do the regular size stitches. And when I'm finished here, so I've come to the end of my row, I pull my sandwich out and I cut my thread so that I've got a couple inches of tail, top and bottom. And there you can see the end of my stitching row. And all I need to do here is pull, and you see that little loop comes up, and I just grab it, and there I have these on top. If I micro-stitched at the end, I could just trim them at the quilt surface, but if I want to bury my threads, they're now ready for me to knot them and bury them. So, if you want to see what this looks like, where I started stitching, you can see there's the little knot that was formed by the micro stitch button, and then my stitching goes. Here you can see right there, there are some very tiny stitches. Let's see if I can zoom in a little on that. Yeah, there you can see I have a couple of very short stitches, and then it continues with my longer stitch. And if I come over here, you can see this is where I use traction to hold the shorter stitches and then let the feed dogs do their job and put in stitches of the regular length. And that will get you started and get you finished with walking foot quilting.